Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Furt, I'm going to pick up where I left, and I want to close the loop on the rate to the crown. So, as a confirmation, the rate to the crown is determined by the crown based on available market rate and availability at that time, and that's communicated to the vendor, the rate that's going to be accepted. And this rate is inclusive of the hourly rate as well as the what we call the per diems for food, transportation, and all of that. Is my statement correct?
Somewhat. So, however many people are responding to an RFP, they will give their financial bid. What that means is there will be, I will determine that I think somebody is worth $1,400. Another vendor may say, I think that person's worth $1,500. And then they say the third vendor says, I think they're worth $1,300. The Crown would determine through a median band that the Crown determines the rate as a result of those three bids is $1,400.
Thank you for that. Okay, so that clarifies that the rate that the Crown developed is a median of the rate by the vendors who are responding to the RFP, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, perfect. So, can you tell me how many of the bids that you received for ArriveCAN was a open bid?
There's only one. Okay. The other three still required price. This is to be clear, though. Yeah. The other three
I'm only interested in
price substantiation.
Mr. Furt, I'm only interested in ArriveCAN because I'm trying to keep the focus on ArriveCAN. My other colleagues want to go to, RCMP or they want to go around the other route with Butler. I'm sticking with ArriveCAN. So what basically I understand or process is the fact that this was a closed bid and the rate that was established for ArriveCAN, naturally, because there were not multiple bids, was the rate that you had put in as a suggested rate to the Crown. Is my understanding correct?
Correct, but there was also price substantiation that had to be provided. What they did for that, the PSPC requested that I provide 4 other competitive bids that have similar categories and rates. So how they determined that way, there's actually going off 4 different other competitive contracts that determine what the median was. So there was price substantiation. Although there were sole source contracts, they still had to be price substantiated.
Okay, so
to prove value to the Crown.
Okay, now, and off of that, I don't understand. The Crown asks you to provide 4 others rather than them going and finding 4 others, and then they looking at the medium. That I don't still understand, and I don't think that's the right way of doing it. That's basically I consider as a conflict of interest. Now, let's go back to the number of RFPs. How many RFP have you responded to the government since 2015 that you have managed to secure between 60 to 65 contracts?
Oh, how many? 100 and 190, 200?
So you, of the 200 or 190 RFP that you've responded, you've secured 60, correct? So 60, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, well, if you look through the contract list, there's other ones which are 25K sole sources.
Yeah, I understand. So my question was, how many RFP have you bid? Because I'm trying to figure out your success rate. Oh. So if your success rate is 100%, then I like to question that. If your success rate is 30%, I like to say, okay, reasonable. What is your success rate as far as securing government contract among those you call, among those that you have bid on that you've secured 60 to 65?
15%.
So 15% of the contracts you've managed to secure 15% of the contracts that you have bid as part of the RFP. So 60 to 65 contract represent 15% of the contract that you bid, and you have won.
65 would be closer probably to 50 because again, some of those ones are $25,000 sole sources, which were directed, like they were closed bids. So the ones which are open for competitive processes, about 15%.
15%. Okay.
Thank you. I'm
Chair,
sorry, that's
how
our
much?
time.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of seconds pass. Thanks. Mrs. Vignola for 2.5, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Firth, I had a question earlier about the Dalian invoices, and you confirmed the name of the individual, Ms. Huspith, CBSA. Now, should it be my understanding that that individual was working for you as a subcontractor and at the same time was wearing another hat working for CBSA during the same period?
I think he was working for me as a subcontractor to CBSA. It's the same thing.
OK, donc il travaillait comme sous-contractant.
So he was a subcontractor for CBSA as the same time as being a subcontractor for you in relation to matters concerning CBSA? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
OK. Donc, je vais essayer de...
I'll try and sum up what I was trying to say. The invoice that we saw was Dalian. Well, not an invoice per se, but a bank transfer. It was a bank transfer to you for Hoodspith CBSA. So Dalian had received a contract from CBSA, and the payment, referring to Butler AI, of course, but the payment for Mr. Holsmith went through you. But at the same time, Mr. Holsmith was a subcontractor for CBSA. So do you understand the line in the sand that I'm trying to make? Because he was wearing two hats. He was a subcontractor in two places and yet for the same department at the same time.
Yeah, sorry, without having that information in front of me, it doesn't seem possible because CBSA has a rule where you can only be on one task or authorization. That's how to eliminate that from happening, that you can only be on one task authorization at the same time. The only thing I could think of that could have happened was maybe there's a delay in billing, but again, CBSA are pretty good. They make sure that there's only ever one person, their name's on one task authorization.
Donc, une autre chose à vérifier, un autre...
So, one more thing to check. That individual was thereafter transferred to the Public Health Agency of Canada. So there was a transfer that occurred, but that was only by way of chance.
Correct, please, for 2.5, sir.
There we go. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Firth, I'd like to go back to this issue of security clearances, and the Office of the Ombudsman found that GC Strategies did not meet the document safeguarding capability at the time it was awarded the $13.9 million non-competitive contract for professional services with CBSA. When did you find out that you did not meet the security clearance for that contract?
We were told, I think it was from the amendment was made at the contract 13 months after it was awarded.
So 13 months into the contract, you were notified that you did not meet the security clearance?
We were notified that they were removing that prerequisite because it wasn't necessary.
And who notified you of that?
I'll have to speak to my business partner. He gets all of the security information.
And did you communicate to them about the security clearance prior to that?
No, this is just, there was a component within the RFP that was not directed towards the vendor. It was just something, again, it was an amendment that was removed after the fact.
It just seems that, like, going back to your previous point or your previous testimony about why the government would rely on your company, one of the reasons is because other companies don't necessarily meet the pre-qualifications to engage in these government contracts. And yet here's a case where your company didn't meet the qualifications for this contract. And the way that the government found a way around it was simply by removing that requirement. Did they express... Yeah, did
Sorry,
they
my
express to
understanding
you
is
why they removed the requirement?
No, so sorry, my understanding is that at the point of contract award, that it isn't determined whether or not they have to have this certain document safeguarding. It's only after the fact, once the project is got going, they decide to remove it or not. We're dealing with invoices. We're not dealing with protected information. That was the determination after the fact, was we were not required to have that at all.
But at the time you signed the contract, you were required to have it. Is that correct?
That's the RFP says.
That's what the RFP says. And yet CBSA did not flag that requirement with you when they signed the contract?
But again, this is, if you would let me quote just what the PSBC, was much more experienced than this than I am. They said PSBC clarified that a distinction needed to be made between a security clearance of an organization or a staff member and a capacity requested by an organization. It is not necessary for an organization to have the capacity at the time of contract award. It is normal that a contract be awarded without the capacity, which is us, being pre-verified by contract security. Otherwise, there has to be an amendment to withdraw that requirement, as it was not necessary, which is what happened for this contract.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barrett, please, for 5.
Is a significant part of your job contacting and communicating with government, their departments, agencies, or crown corporations?
Yes, it is.
And how many hours per month would you say that you spend on that?
It's hard to quantify that, because if we're busy with existing contracts, then there's contract management and other components versus new business development and interactions and identifying new opportunities.
Let's look for a number. You can use you and your partner combined. Mr. Anthony, how many hours per month?
Sorry, I can answer that honestly, accurately, sorry.
Is it more than 80?
Yes, per month, for sure.
More than 80 per month. Okay. Is it more than 100?
I can't quantify. I'm just giving you an answer of 80. More than 80.
So do you also that includes proactively making the government aware of the services that you offer?
Again, sorry, it depends. It depends on whether or not we are. With ArriveCAN, there was not 80 hours of meeting and proposing and getting new business, because we were managing 100 resources at that time.
Are you registered?
So it varies.
Are you registered to lobby?
No, I'm not, because we do not charge a fee.
As an owner of GC Strategies, you obviously have control over your company's website. You were here 16 months ago as part of the ARRIVESCAM inquiry, and I asked you in October 2022 to provide names of senior government officials that offer glowing endorsements for you on your website. I want to read some of those because you haven't had a chance over the last 16 months, I guess, to furnish us with that information. Here's one for you. I think they are first and foremost are a taxpayer. They, GC Strategy, see the bigger picture and do not chase the quick sale. I think they are first and foremost are a taxpayer and see efficiency and getting the best value for government. That's the Chief Data Officer of the public sector. Who was that? What's their name?
So first of all, apologies for not getting that information to you. I thought I had. I mean, I sent hundreds of pages at that date, and I'm more than happy to give you that information in writing.
Okay, let's be serious, sir. You've had 16 months, and so you want us to believe that you're going to provide us with that information now that you've been asked again. Government of Canada senior executive said, quote, GC Strategies listen and try to find solutions to my problem versus selling me a solution to a problem I've never had. Who was that person?
So I'm sorry, you can ask me the 3 or 4 that are on there, and my answer is going to be the same. I will get you that information. I promise you that. I thought I'd sent it over 16 months ago.
Let me be very clear that in the ARRIVESCAM, there are all kinds of players who play all kinds of different roles, and you've demonstrated yourself to be a liar. You've lied before a parliamentary committee on multiple occasions. You even undertook to provide to me this information 16 months ago. You and I had this exchange. And now you're here, and the only reason you came was because you were threatened to be arrested, and you've come virtually, and now your undertaking is to provide the information you promise, cross your heart, that you're going to do it this time.